Something seriously unsettling was captured on camera at Varna Airport, Bulgaria in July 2014. 28-year-old German tourist Lars Mittank walks into the airport's clinic. It's a follow-up after being treated for a ruptured eardrum. A maintenance worker happens to walk in. Lars turns white as a ghost, bolts out of the clinic. He's so upset he leaves behind his passport, his phone, his wallet, even his luggage. He sprints through the terminal, runs outside, hops the fence, runs full speed across a field, and then disappears into the woods. I'm John Genoa. This is America's Strangest History. That happened nearly a decade ago. That's the last anyone ever saw of Lars. Today, his mother continues the search, but no trace has ever been recovered. Nothing. I think it's time we take a closer look at the case and see if we can't piece together what happened to Lars Mittank. Before we dive into the chaos of Lars's final days, let's take a step back and start with the question, who was Lars Mittank? Born February 9th, 1986 in northern Germany, Lars grew up in a small town of Itzehoe in the state of Schleswig-Holstein. Friends and family describe him as friendly, sociable, and athletic. He loved soccer, especially professional soccer player Werder Bremen. His team loyalty ultimately placed him into harm's way. He wasn't someone drifting through life. Lars had a stable job working at a power plant. When he wasn't at work, he was caring for his father, who suffered a stroke. His friends said he was relaxed, having a good time, looking forward to the trip to Bulgaria. They went to the Golden Sands. It's a resort town on the Black Sea coast. Lars and his friends were on vacation, simple as that. Here's a key point I'm going to tell you right up front. Lars had no known history of mental illness. His family said there was nothing like that in their background. His friends saw no signs of instability. He wasn't on drugs. He wasn't someone who ever talked about disappearing or even running away. So when you consider the footage of him sprinting through the airport, terrified, leaving everything behind, remember, this was a sudden and dramatic break from his ordinary life. I think that has probative value. Lars's trip to Bulgaria with his friends started without incident. They flew into Varna and headed to Golden Sands. That's the resort on the Black Sea. They hung out, they went swimming, played some soccer, relaxed. Nice vacation. Friends say Lars was having fun, joking, he was having a blast. Nothing was off. All that changed on the night of July 5th, 2014. At a bar in Golden Sands, Lars got into an argument with a group of other German tourists. They were fans of the opposing team. Lars was a devoted Werder Bremen fan. The others supported Bayern Munich. The argument turned physical. Shoves turned into blows. Lars says he was outnumbered. He says 4 men assaulted him. Lars's friends weren't there when the fight broke out. By the time they saw him again, he was injured. This was a serious fight. He ruptured his eardrum, and then he also injured his jaw. He later told them that he'd been attacked by 4 men. He believed they were locals hired by the other German tourists who supported the other team. Here's where things get a little murky. After the fight, Lars vanished for hours. His friends didn't see him again until the following morning. Where he went, what he did, and who he may have encountered during those missing hours has never been established. It's a glaring omission in the timeline that could hold crucial clues. When he later resurfaced the next morning, July 6th, Lars rejoined his friends at the resort. Now, he was in pain. He said his jaw hurt and his ear was ringing from a blow. A doctor later confirmed that he had a ruptured eardrum. The doctor prescribed antibiotics, and he advised him not to fly because the pressure in the cabin could cause severe pain or even permanent hearing damage. Lars's friends offered to stay, but he insisted that they leave as planned. He told them he'd catch a later flight once his ear healed. That decision, to stay behind in Bulgaria alone, would turn out to be the last time they ever saw him. So here's what we know about the fight itself. Lars got into it with some other German tourists over soccer. He claimed the other men left, but then came back later. A fight ensued, and Lars sustained a heavy blow to his ear that ruptured his eardrum. After the fight and his injuries, Lars's friends packed up and headed home. They urged him to go with them. They even offered to stay. But Lars insisted he'd be fine. He told them to go on without him and that he'd catch a flight later once his ear healed. This decision left Lars completely alone in Bulgaria. He moved into a budget hotel near Varna Airport called Hotel Color. Now, this is a critical point because this is where his behavior changed in disturbing ways. Hotel staff later recalled Lars seemed restless and unsettled. Surveillance cameras caught him pacing the halls, hiding in the elevator, peering nervously out windows like someone was following him. One night he left the hotel around 1 in the morning and then wandered into the dark. An hour later he returned, still looking on edge. No one knows where he went or what happened during that hour. Lars made several phone calls to his mother back in Germany. In some of those calls, he talked in whispers. He said he was being followed, that people were trying to kill him. He begged her to cancel his credit cards because he was convinced someone was after his money or his life. His mother later said Lars sounded like he was afraid. The morning of July 8th, Lars checked out of hotel color. He made his way to Varna Airport carrying his luggage, ready, by all outward appearances, to fly home. But instead of boarding the plane, he walked into the airport clinic. Within minutes, he went into panic mode and was captured by CCTV, bolting out the door like he was running for his life. So, on the morning of July 8th, 2014, Lars left hotel color and made his way to Varna Airport. He carried his luggage and walked into the airport's medical office. Dr. Kosta Kostov, the airport doctor, examined him. Dr. Kostov later said Lars was nervous, jittery, and erratic, but nothing suggested he was violent. Lars was there for a follow-up for his ruptured eardrum, basically to see if he was cleared to fly. But then something strange happened. While Lars sat in the clinic, a construction worker walked in. This man was doing routine work at the airport, nothing more. The sight of him seemed to set Lars off. Witnesses say Lars's face drained of color. He stood up, shouted something along the lines of, "I don't want to die here." Then he bolted out of the clinic, leaving behind everything, including his passport, his phone, his wallet, his luggage. He sprinted through the terminal, past a lot of confused people, and then out of the building. Security cameras recorded the entire sequence. We've got Lars running full speed across the parking area. We see him leaping the fence, lined with barbed wire. After that, he seems to vanish into the tree line and the tall grass. He was barefoot, took nothing with him. That was the last confirmed sighting of Lars Mittank. They searched the fields, the woods, everything around Varna Airport, but no trace of him has ever been recovered. After Lars vaulted the fence and disappeared into the woods, Bulgarian authorities searched the area. Police combed through the fields and the nearby forest, looking for any sign of him. They found nothing. No clothes, no wallet, no phone, no body, not a trace. That search was expanded in the days following his disappearance. Volunteers joined in. His mother flew to Bulgaria to beg for answers. She was told the same thing. There was no sign of her son. He just vanished. But here's what makes the whole series of events even more unusual. Varna Airport isn't surrounded by miles of wilderness. Lars didn't run into a never-ending sea of wilderness like a national forest. The airport borders a few open fields, some wooded patches and roads. That's it. If Lars collapsed nearby or got lost, there really should have been some indication of what happened to him, where he went, what he did. You think, right? But despite official searches and independent efforts by the family, not a single piece of evidence has ever surfaced. In the years that followed, private investigators checked hospitals for unidentified patients. They combed psychiatric wards, homeless shelters, and morgues. All came up empty. Reports of possible sightings surfaced from time to time, but none were ever confirmed. I might describe the investigation itself as pretty thin. Bulgarian police never identified or charged the men who fought with Lars at the Golden Sands. That's kind of a big deal, right? They never named the maintenance worker in the airport clinic or said if he was interviewed. That's huge. Why not? Lars ran for his life after seeing this guy. Seems like it might be a good idea to question him. As far as the record goes, no one was ever held accountable for what happened in the days before Lars vanished. So we're left with an international mystery. A man who runs into a patch of woods in broad daylight with police and security just yards away, and then he vanishes into thin air. His mother still searches for him, but 10 years later, still no answers. Only theories. Why is that? When a man disappears in broad daylight at an airport, leaving behind all his belongings, people start looking for answers. Over the years, several theories have been suggested about what happened to Lars Mittank. None have been proven, but here's what people have considered. First, maybe a medical incident. Lars had a ruptured eardrum, possibly a head injury from the fight, and he'd been prescribed antibiotics. Some say that the combination might have caused dizziness, paranoia, or confusion. Sounds reasonable if we're clueless about medical science. Because here's the problem. A ruptured eardrum causes pain, not psychosis. Antibiotics can have side effects, but nothing that explains the sheer terror that we see on CCTV footage. So while his injuries set the stage, they don't explain his panic and they don't really fit the pattern. Second, a sudden psychological break. Now, some point to a psychotic episode, maybe triggered by stress, the injury, maybe even an undiagnosed mental health condition. But his mother insists he had no history of mental illness. His family had no history of mental illness. His friends said the same thing. Now, it's possible a psychological episode was triggered by some past trauma and Bulgaria just happened to be where it surfaced. If so, Lars could have run into the woods in a paranoid state, and then what happened after that, no one knows. Like the medical theory, the psychological theory seems unlikely. Third, foul play. It's been suggested that the men from the bar fight weren't necessarily done with him. Soccer fans may have been holding a very deep grudge. Maybe Lars really was being followed like he told his mother. If that's true, running into the woods is likely an escape attempt. Sounds reasonable, but no evidence has ever tied anyone to chasing him at the airport. No one in the CCTV footage is seen running after him. Fourth, an international disappearance. A darker theory is that Lars wanted to vanish. He ran on purpose to start a new life. Now, I might be inclined to subscribe to this theory, except that the theory kind of clashes with the facts. Remember, Lars left behind his passport, his phone, his wallet, his luggage, right? Without them, how could he build a new life? Also, it's strange that in the 10 days following his disappearance, no verified sighting and no use of his identity has ever turned up. Nothing. And finally, there's the worst case possibility. Lars died shortly after running into the woods. Maybe from exposure, maybe from an accident, maybe something worse. But here's the chilling part. No body was ever recovered. In a place not known for vast wilderness, he somehow vanished. Each theory has its holes. Each raises more questions than answers. That's why Lars's disappearance has become one of the internet's most discussed modern mysteries. Nearly a decade has passed since the last confirmed sighting of Lars Mittank. Despite searches, police investigations, private detectives, and lots of internet sleuths poring over the footage, no trace of him has ever been found. His mother Sandra hasn't stopped looking. She's made public appeals, spoken with journalists. She's begged for leads across Europe. Each time someone reports a possible sighting, a homeless man in Germany, a hitchhiker in Bulgaria, a drifter in another part of Europe, she always follows up. The footage of Lars sprinting through Varna Airport has turned him into an internet legend. People call him the most famous missing tourist in the world. Online forums debate every second of that CCTV footage. The look on his face, the way he ran, what may have spooked him in that clinic, like the maintenance worker who, to the best of our knowledge, was never interviewed. In an age of cameras, passports, and digital footprints, how does a man vanish into thin air? Airports are among the most secure places on Earth. Lars ran in broad daylight, in a populated area, and nothing about this case makes sense. That's why this case refuses to die. It has all the elements of a mystery novel. A young man, no history of instability, no family history of mental illness, suddenly terrified, abandons all his personal property in a foreign country, then he disappears without a trace. This mystery leaves us with more questions than answers. Lars Mittank's story is more than a missing person case. It's a modern mystery with zero clues. The absence of evidence here is remarkable in itself. He wasn't a drifter. He wasn't a man running from a troubled past. He was a 28-year-old German tourist on vacation with his friends, looking forward to going home. Then, within 48 hours, something changed. A bar fight, a ruptured eardrum, a night of missing hours nobody can explain. We see paranoia that seemed to come out of nowhere. Lars made the whispered phone calls to his mother talking about people following him. Lastly, a frantic dash through the airport, over a fence, and then into the woods, never to be seen again. Nearly a decade later, the official record remains empty. No trace, no belongings, no body, nothing. In an age where almost everything leaves a digital footprint, Lars Mittank seems to have stepped into a different dimension. That's what makes this case so haunting. And that's where we'll leave it. I'm John Genoa. This is America's Strangest History. Thanks for watching.